If you think that one day you'd like to sail the Greek islands of the Aegean Sea, then you need to watch this story. "16,000 miles, one ocean, 11 seas, 12 countries and hundreds of experiences and adventures. We're Jackie and Wayne, and we're sailing around the world."
This one is mostly about sailing, and the sailing is mostly about sailing in the Meltemi. Why? Because the Meltemi decides everything. Where you sail, when you sail, and where you can anchor.
One of my dreams from years ago was to charter a yacht and sail the Greek islands, sailing in gentle breezes from one picture-perfect anchorage to another, and exploring the colourful Greek villages with pretty tavernas, offering grilled sardines with fresh local olives and local fruity wines. The crystal clear waters of the Aegean Sea embracing the boat and inviting a refreshing plunge at any time, with or without clothes according to the circumstances. In those dreams there were never any other boats sharing the water, and the local people were always eager to greet these great wanderers from so far away. They would shower hospitality upon us and beg us to stay, to see all that there was to be seen in their natural idyll. It never occurred to me that I might cruise these famously beautiful places in my own boat, which I'd sailed on her own bottom all the way from home. And there were other realities that were somehow never in my musings. The gentle breeze becomes a Meltemi. Rising from the northern quarters in the morning, it freshens to strong in the afternoon, veering more westerly until the evening, when it slowly eases overnight, and then it rests for a new assault the next day. It's not a particularly brutal wind, but it has to be respected. Cosmandraki, sailing vessel CathayOz. CathayOz, over. Yes, we are. We have a booking for today, over.
We start our journey check-in to Greece, on the island of Kos, just 15 miles from Voyaging. The formalities were straightforward, and in no time we were tied up to the town wall at Cosmandraki.
By now I'm starting to get a little bit more confident with med mooring, but not confident enough to film it. Instead, here's a sequence that shows a boat coming in next to us. You can see that there's a lot of running around and shouting. There's a cast of thousands on this one, so you have to be a bit more on your game when there's just two of you, and the boat's nearly 8 metres wide. Grab the boat. I'll pull it up now.
This is our first impression of Greece. There are a lot of tourists, but it was nice, and we stayed for 3 days.
After getting a heads up from a local, we decided to head next to Simi. This wasn't part of the original plan, and what you need to know when you cruise these islands is your first move is important. If there are places that you absolutely want to see, then go there as soon as you can. If you don't, you may find that the Meltemi makes it difficult, or even impossible, onshore more south in the islands.
We have a great sail to Simi. CathayOz truly loves to run free in a fresh or strong breeze.
I like it when it just slides down the waves like it's nothing. It's late afternoon. Meltemi's blowing. A current of 20.5, a boat speed of 8 knots, wing on wing. Pretty much past the course, really. stay like this about another 5 miles and then we're going to harden up a bit. It may not be so much fun then.
Our boat speed is
9.4 there, man.
wow.
I was surfing for a good amount. Single reef in the main. So the current's 20 odd knots, so maybe 25 knots, 26 knots of wind at the moment. And steering and being unsuccessful just at the moment.
Wow.
Lost it that time. Got distracted, sir. We're just right on the edge of what we can do with a goose swing jib. We'll have to pull down shortly, but I'd like to hold as long as I can. Try and get some power to go through this narrow gap. It's about 0.3 of a nautical mile wide. A bloody big island, very tall island on the left-hand side of it, so I've got no idea what the katabatic winds are going to be in there. So we want to have some speed to go through if we can.
The captain was hand steering in these conditions. He does not like using the autopilot when the wind and the waves are directly behind us. And the boat is going fast because he does not want an accidental dive. In these conditions, that could break the boom or even the rig.
We're approaching Simi from the northwest and the wind is also in the northwest. We have to go through the gap and then turn north. This will bring the wind up to close haul and that'll be uncomfortable for the couple of miles till we get to our destination. It has to be remembered that CathayOz is a big, heavy cruising catamaran. We're sailing with a single reef in the main and about 80% of the jib out in 25 to 28 knots of true wind. That may not suit a lighter or smaller boat, and with the Meltemi you really have to reef early and often. During the afternoon in particular, it is very unlikely to ease off and more likely to get stronger.
After walking up the side of the island for a couple of miles, we could take down the sails and motor into beautiful St. George's Bay.
This is a gorgeous bay in person, but it is small. We were the only boat free anchored. The rest had their sterns moored to the beach. This meant that when we swung with the wind, we would go uncomfortably close to other boats. With a lot more wind predicted to be coming, we left the next morning to motor up the coast to another bay where we could ride out that blow.
The Meltemi was predicted to blow up to and over 40 knots for the next couple of days. We needed somewhere with a lot of room so that we could put out a lot of chain.
Here again is why the Meltemi decides things. It never makes sense to go sailing anywhere when the wind is forecast over 30 knots. That means that you will occasionally be windbound. If you are chartering, then finding a spot like this, where there are options to tie up to a marina, means that you can leave the boat whilst it's blowing and tour inland. For poor cruisers like us though, marinas are a rare treat and we have to anchor and ride it out on the boat. And there's a really good Meltemi blowing. The Meltemi is the wind that comes to the north really from the Black Sea and goes down and conforms to the coast of Turkey turkey really. It just blows like stink while it's going. As I'm speaking now, there's another gust just hitting us. And we've been battered by gusts all day. And the good news is we've got another full day of this tomorrow as well as tonight. At the moment it's blowing about 20 knots, so it's not too bad. But we get these gusts every now and then that are well over 40 knots. And they're actually picking up spray from the water, the top of the water, and blowing that as it goes. And when they hit, it's like an explosion. It's one of those times when you're glad you chose a good anchor, I guess, because we've got about 80 metres of chain out and we're in about 16 metres of water. So we've got a fair bit of weight to hold us down, and even still, over the course of today, we've moved about 8 or 9 metres from where we originally started. That's an interesting time. I'm sure that at times today, we've actually been hit by the explosive ones that might even be over 50 knots. They're like incredibly high speed gusts. Still, we're here and we're holding, and that's a good thing. As long as we keep holding for the next 30 odd hours, we'll be okay.
Eventually, the worst of the wind died down, and we were able to have a short look around the town. It wasn't going to die off altogether for a while, so we decided to make some day hops to get to the Cyclades Islands, and in particular the famous island of Santorini.
We set off into a mild breeze, but as happens in these parts, it increased in strength all day. Our plan was first to sail to Tilos and stay in the small town marina there. The wind built steadily through the day, however, now that we were heading west and the breeze was in the north, we were on a broad reach. We found that the autopilot kept going offline while trying to hold the boat, and I ended up hand steering for most of it. We would find out a week or so later that there was a major problem, but for now it was intermittent.
This sort of sailing is fun and fast. The waves were now on our side, so there was a lot of water being thrown over the bow and over the side.
When we did get to Tilos, we had a problem with the mainsail and it wouldn't come down. We couldn't film this because it was really hectic and the very strong wind. We did find the problem after about 15 minutes, but by the time we got the sails squared away, that small marina was full, and we then had to sail another 10 miles around the island to a protected anchorage.
This was very difficult because the last 5 miles was against the wind, which was now blowing to 30 knots. Poor CathayOz has a lot of wind resistance, and we were only motoring at 2.5 knots, so it took a long time.
Tutorial on katabatic winds and how they work. Now we've just sailed from around the corner out there, and I can tell you that outside it's blowing 24 to 30 knots. It's really quite blowy. And so it's coming across here from the north and the west. Now, the interesting thing about that is, now that we've come behind the island, now we're on the south of the island, and those hills are so steep, they're about 200 metres. The wind is coming across the top of there, over here and back, and if you look at the wind indicator down there, you can see that we now have the wind, well, it's going from the front, but mostly it's coming from the left-hand side, or has been, even though, and that's from the south, even though the actual wind is from the north. Very strange. Right now it's doing weird things, but that's basically the wind's coming from there, even though it's coming from there. Strange. The forecast now was for more strong wind for a couple of days, so we waited. We planned that as soon as we had a chance we would dash for Astapalia, rest there, and then try and make it to Santorini. You can start to see from all this how the Meltemi decides what you do. It'll blow for 4 or 5 days and then go away for 3 days or more before coming back again. Everything has to be planned around this. For non-Europeans like us, this can be a real problem because we only get 90 days in the European Union before we have to leave again. We then have to stay away for 90 days before we can come back.
So having to stay on the boat in windy anchorages for days really is some time that we have for touring and sightseeing.
So, sailing in Greece and Turkey is very much informed by the Meltemi. It's best before you come here to study your intended itinerary really carefully. Depending on your starting point, you have to take your opportunities for any northern destinations as soon as the wind allows. You also have to study the available anchorages in the area where you'll be cruising. You might be bottled up there for days, so if you can afford it, marinas provide an opportunity to keep touring even when the Meltemi is blowing hard. Finally, do not neglect your seamanship. The Meltemi deserves respect, and it's not at all unusual to find the wind going from 10 to 30 knots over a short 20-mile passage. Keep an eye on it and reduce sail for the conditions.
As we sail towards our anchorage in Santorini, we come to the end of the episode. As I promised at the beginning, this one was all about sailing. We hope that you find it a little bit useful and also entertaining. We never stop learning as we sail around this wonderful world.
Yeah.